This episode of Bolden Consulting Presents Village Conversations is brought to you with the support of the Village Fund, the LA Partnership for Early Childhood Investment, and the Conrad N. Hilton Foundation. Hi, I'm Amber Bolden, and this is Bolden Consulting Presents Village Conversations, where we talk to community-based organizations, supporters of the work, to learn more about why and how they support Black maternal health. Today, we actually have a special conversation where instead of talking to the particular community-based organizations of the Village Fund, we're actually going to be talking to funders and people who have been in the work, deep in the work in every level, and how to get money and how to have relationships with funders. So we have Gabriel Maldonado joining us today. So excited. And Amelia Cobb as well, who's also joining us. The Village Fund is a product of AIM, the African American Infant and Maternal Mortality Initiative. And we are just so excited to have these philanthropic leaders, trailblazers, and people with us to get us started. Without further ado, we start every episode with giving flowers. So we like to just start our episodes by giving flowers. And what that means is we're just reading the bios. Like, this is actually just what you've done. So I'm going to start here and introduce you to the audience. If you're not familiar with their work, you will be today, and you will want to follow them. So I'll start. Amelia Cobb is an equity strategist, researcher, and thought partner who spends her days collaborating with executives and senior directors leading transformative change in philanthropy and public health. Amelia's professional experience spans 25 years leading the design, vision, and strategy for multi-million-dollar grant-making initiatives that invest in community-based organizations and maternal and child health care models at state, national, and local levels, including the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Office on Women's Health, Susan G. Komen for the Cure, the California Healthcare Foundation, and First 5 LA. Amelia holds a master's in public health from George Washington University's Millikan Institute School of Public Health. She has been honored and recognized by the White House as a champion of change under the Obama-Biden administration, Washington, D.C.'s Impact Leader of the Year, and a health equity scholar at Johns Hopkins University, where she is currently studying and pursuing a doctoral degree in health equity and social justice. Can we just pause right there? Amelia credits her commitment to community impact and social justice to her early years as an undergraduate at Howard University. I wanted to also say HU, but I am not an alum, but yes. We got to shout out our HBCUs, yes, and volunteering at a local food kitchen. Amelia is a strategist. She's an activist. She is a partner in arms in this work, and we are so excited to have her. Thank you for joining us. Next, I get to introduce Gabriel Maldonado. Gabriel is the founder and CEO of TruEvolution, a trailblazing nonprofit that sits at the intersection of healthcare and justice. TruEvolution provides healthcare, behavioral health, and emergency housing support for the LGBTQ plus community. And as a former member of the Presidential Advisory Council on HIV/AIDS under President Obama, he works to elevate the representation of minority community-based organizations in state and federal policy priorities. In addition to his work at TruEvolution, Gabriel continues his advocacy by serving on regional boards such as the Borrego Community Foundation, the fifth largest federally qualified health center in the U.S., and global organizations such as the AIDS Healthcare Foundation. Bringing a passion for business and consultancy, Gabriel works to advise industry leaders as an advisory board member for Janssen Therapeutics and Merck & Company. He's a stalwart in the movement toward LGBTQIA plus justice. He's Governor Newsom's appointee to the state's first Racial Equity Commission. And hailing from the Inland Empire and raised in Compton, Gabriel has experienced and witnessed the impacts of environmental pollution, predatory industry practices. But he is a community leader who is committed to the change for good. He is a force of nature. Gabe is an alchemist. He is a lighthouse, and most dearly, he's a friend. This is my brother, Gabriel. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, love.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
All right, y'all. So if you have not guessed it, we are in the room with greatness. We are in the room with people who have earned their place, and we are in the room with people who have information for the community to talk about the issues that a lot of, not just issues, but the barriers to funding, to fundraising, to access to funds, and you're vets of the game. So I'm just excited to have you here. We're going to go ahead and get started. Gabe, I'm going to start with you.
Sure.
How did it start and how's it going? What is your why? What brings you to this work? You began TruEvolution in 2007. HQ is in the IE.
Yep.
Not currently the epicenter of LGBTQIA plus progressiveness and forward thinking. You have a sizable staff, I think about 24 now, but you are
36.
Oh, 36
yeah, growth.
and growing.
And growing.
Yes. How did you start this work and how is it going? How are you continuing?
Well, thank you for having me. And, I began doing this work at 16 years old. I was an old school organizer, handing out leaflets in the streets, working mostly in gang prevention work in Los Angeles.
Okay.
So in 2007, when I went to UCR as an undergrad, it was at the height of the Proposition 8 campaign. And for those who don't remember, it was a ballot initiative suspending the rights for LGBT people to marry and define marriage as solely between a man and a woman. And what is so significant for me that was different about a ballot initiative versus, a law passed by representatives is that this was actually a reflection of the hearts and minds of individuals and our neighbors. And so I saw that Riverside County not only had a predominance of discrimination at the time to LGBTQ people, but we didn't quite have the same organizing, the same tools, the same systems or apparatus that I saw in Los Angeles. So TruEvolution was born out of that activism in the intentions of trying to bring those principles to the work in Riverside County. So we've done that now for 17 years. So
Ashe.
And so it will be. Yeah.
Thank you. Gabe, I'm going to continue with you.
Sure.
One more. You have been, I would say, a lightning rod in the Inland Empire. Like you started TruEvolution. You closed FY22, I think, with a budget of a little over 20 million. You've recently broke new ground on a $3 million emergency housing and behavioral support campus and you've also launched the LGBTQ plus center with no plan to slow down. What would you say has made the most impactful difference in your organizational growth?
In my organization and sort of my wider belief about leadership and organizational development, it's the relationships you have, the network of relationships from your staffing to your board members, to your advisors, to the relationships you have with funders and strategic partners. It is relationships. And I think first and foremost, it starts with your team. And, TruEvolution, we at least try to operate on a model we call the first team model. And for us, that is really the source and the epicenter of where productive work happens, where collaboration happens, and where we can advance. And so if you can kind of bring these justice principles into your own house, start there in creating a strong nucleus in your organization. You can do anything at any time with anything you want to do.
Okay, I'm gonna come back to that.
Please do.
Because I feel like so many organizations struggle to reach the level of growth and expansion that you have accomplished, quite honestly, especially when they're founder CEOs. And I think you have that experience, like how to create an organization that really grows and expands with the needs. So I'm going to come back, but
Please,
I do want to really get to Amelia because Amelia, we have, again, just like from the funder's perspective, you've served as the manager for special projects in the Division of Policy and Strategy at First 5 LA, where you managed an $18 million policy advocacy fund portfolio. This among being in the giver's seat on a lot of on local and state and federal funding initiatives. What initially attracted you to philanthropy, and what has been like the continuation of your growth in these broader spaces?
Well, first I would say a lot of this work happened when I was in DC. I started working for a national well-known medical association that launched an HIV prevention initiative in Southeast Anacostia in DC, which that area has transformed a little bit now.
Yeah.
But in the early 90s looked very different than it does today.
Yeah.
And so out of that, I started to learn what public-private partnerships, what that really meant from a financing perspective. And then had the opportunity to become one of Howard University's first AmeriCorps Vista leaders, running the HIV AIDS and education training clinic at Howard University Hospital. And I noticed I didn't see a lot of faces. Now, while I might have been in Howard, when I go to the funding seats of different tables in the community and go to this meeting and that policy meeting and really starting to understand what policy is, there weren't a lot of people that looked like me. Then I had the pleasure of doing a year where I took a little leave of absence from Howard University and did a health policy fellowship at Harvard Medical School and Harvard Kennedy School of Government. And so definitely when I got there, I had one of the most phenomenal mentors. Shout out to Charlie Homer from Harvard, who really taught me that I could pretty much be at any table. And I must admit at the time, I didn't really have a lot of confidence because I was young and I only saw myself. There were no other Black people sitting at the table. And I wanted to go to medical school at the time, but I started talking to him and others and my own doctor. And I learned the true power of change happens at the policy table and happens at the funder table for the things that I wanted to do. And so that really ignited me to really want to look at, you know, how can I be at that table to represent voices? Because growing up, there was a time where I didn't have health care. And that was a big struggle for my mother, who was working and was a single parent. And I would see the medical bills that would come in. And so that just stayed in the back of my mind. And so after that, I just had a series of different opportunities. But the catch, like you said, is about building partnerships. But it's also about building yourself to be at the table in a way where you can partner with people. And you, more importantly, you can learn.
Yeah. Just for the people who don't know, because I think we have a range of listeners, what is a public-private partnership? What is that?
So, a public-private partnership can look a variety of different ways, but at its most basic level, I am my background is in health equity. I'm a health equity practitioner and researcher by training. And that looks like when the federal government partners with local community-based organizations and also partners sometimes with big private philanthropy. And what people do not often realize is the federal government is the largest grant maker in the U.S. So I know we have different businesses that we order online from that we know that are billionaires, but even their foundations cannot top what the federal government invests annually into these grant calls and annually into other different initiatives that honestly come year after year after year. They might have a different name, but they just keep coming back. And so how do federal governments come together with those three prongs? Again, federal community-based organizations and private philanthropy. Could even be corporate social responsibility and that arm of philanthropy, which is more B2B business driven to the community. And how can they come together to solve a problem? And healthcare is a prime example, but also having some experience in LA. Education is another opportunity in a way that public-private partnerships come together.
Love it. The you mentioned corporate social responsibility, and I just want to say, pro tip: if you are just brand spanking new to fundraising, grant making, sponsorship, Google corporate social responsibility and whatever business you are interested in partnering with, and they most likely have a corporate social responsibility initiative or arm or way for you to find out what they are aligned with, what their priorities are, and what might connect with your organization, so you can learn from there too.
I think what Amelia just said about really knowing the different nuances and becoming very well read on understanding the funding landscape yourself, so you can know how to be a meaningful partner. Because within the CSR world, corporate social responsibility, you have some corporations that do prioritize charitable giving. So they have an arm where they're giving money out for a variety of grant causes that are in their priorities. But then you have a lot of corporations who are involved in strategic initiatives, meaning everything is internal. They're coming up with their own sort of work that is primarily staff-led, staff-executed, and staff-driven. And then how do you fit in and create innovations and propose ideas that can fit within a strategic initiatives model as well? And I think that is the key to development, is understanding that there are so many different archetype, personas, energies. You're not just interfacing with a corporation, but you're interfacing with individuals at a corporation, all who also have differing priorities and visions for how the corporation's responsibility is let out.
Thank you for clarifying that, Gabe. I think one of the things that I just enjoy always whenever I get to work with you or hear you is I hear the business come out. Like, do you have an MBA?
Yeah.
Right. Like, I hear it's like there is this foundational community activist hat that is so clear. but then there's also the business. I can hear it married, you know what I mean? And I think it's just been so beneficial to me from far away, even watching the growth of TruEvolution and the work that you've done, is just really understanding that business component of giving, you know? I do want to go back just a little bit, because we talked about like what you talked about, relationships being like kind of that most important part that's really helped your growth. Sure. But how do you, as a strategy, what would you say to like early organizations, maybe 5 years in, who are maybe moving from being like kitchen table CBOs and would like to have permanent staff and, you know, have a mission, but, you know, you're at a growth space where it requires you to decide, can I stay true to the mission? Because funding might, you know, look different. How did you grow from that space, and how do you stay true to the mission of what your priorities are for TruEvolution?
I think I came to the realization that we had to change how we looked at social impact and nonprofits in general, 501c3s specifically. I'm referring to those that have that designation, from the charity model to the social enterprise model, where we are actually looking at our operations and activities as businesses and the people that we're interfacing with as customers. And number one, I found that all sorts of business innovations and opportunities for how to scale dollars came about. But I also found that there became a new value proposition for my staff to serve our community well. When we changed how we looked at it, that they were a customer, that they're someone that we are supposed to be of service to. These aren't people we're just giving a handout to, but these are the same way that the Amex or AT&T retention line wants to hold on to your business as an Amex card holder or as an AT&T subscriber, and they work hard. How do we also do the same to hold and value our clients the same way? And so if to be more specific, the first thing I would say is to be very well self-defined in your impact. So first, what is it, the kind of world that you're trying to achieve? And then the second question I ask is, who would pay for that?
I love it.
You know, who would pay for that? So if there is a community garden that you're trying to build because you want to create more fresh fruits, well, who pays for fresh fruits? Community. Local grocers, in universities or institutions, or local chains of small businesses. So I think kind of putting that logic together between both impact and how just bare bones, how you plan on making money, is a good place to start.
I love it. I enjoy watching your brain work. Can
I also just make a light bulb that went off in my head as you were talking, Gabe?
Please.
Really quickly, service never goes out of style.
Period. Yeah.
And I think from a funder perspective and a previous social entrepreneur in DC for 14 years, whether you are for-profit, because we have some for-profit people who do philanthropy, but for organizations like yours and those starting, never goes out of style.
I think so.
Service is not a trend. And that is something that funders really, really look at, even if they don't tell you they are watching.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
Yeah. So Amelia, I wanted to jump to you. I have a question. And for me, it just felt like such a cold observation, but I think it's true. And this is from one of my professors when I was in my master's, when I was doing my master's of public policy at UCR. But the professor said the need is not enough. You know, the need itself. And like, you know, for us as students, we're like, there's a need. We need to fix it and throw money. But like, and as I began to think about things like homelessness, you know, the disparities with Black women in birthing and Black maternal health, like there were so many areas of need, and just the need itself was not enough to move funding dollars to it, or to really invest in it as a change, as change required. So I guess my question is like regarding like that, and one, if that is true, like what funders typically don't want to be the only hero, and there's usually a system that needs to be in place. There needs to, for funders, they want to know that their dollars are safe with you. What can you talk to us a little bit more about kind of the psyche or the thought behind funding and fundraising, like when there is a need, but there still needs to be mechanisms that make sure that it's being handled responsibly?
Well, first I would say philanthropy in general, you know, it's about solving a problem. And if you're actually going to solve a problem on some level, you can't do it by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really the core reason why philanthropy likes to have other funders at the table.
Mm-hmm.
Also, we want to know that other people are investing in you. And Gabe is a prime example. It sounds like as you've been growing, funders have been able to see that they can invest in you over time. And so part of that is also relationship building.
Mm-hmm.
Funders will often fund something at a smaller level. And then as the relationship grows, the investment grows over time because the relationship's growing, but you're also documenting that you can do this and you and what comes with you.
Mm-hmm.
So what I would say in response to your question is, one, the need is not enough. We need to know what comes with you.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
Who is coming with you,
That's a good point.
and for how long are they coming with you to help solve this problem? The other thing I would say is, a lot of organizations have superpowers, but struggle to communicate what that superpower is.
Mm-hmm.
And narrative is so powerful in this grant making kind of industry of grant makers. And so I know this podcast is focused on philanthropy and fundraising, but the intersection of that is a really great grant writer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so how can they make that story come alive off the paper? How can they give us imagery and make it and humanize it? That really changes the need, and it makes the need that's a real need grow to a giant size need with just in seconds. And so communication for organizations is really key. And what I would say to that as a tip in this moment is, if you don't have a communications team and you're just starting, but you have service, you have documented service, partner with other nonprofit organizations to really look at, who can I barter with? Maybe you have something they don't have. Who could I partner with? So maybe they can teach me, help me to communicate this to funders. So really it's about telling that narrative and that story.
I'm going to come back because I think we talk about narrative quite a bit, and I think you can't overstate the importance of a narrative, and like knowing what the narrative is.
We read narratives every day.
Yes.
Whether we realize it or not.
Yes. Yes. You made a comment, and you said we can't do it alone as funders. And I think I've been in conversations with new CBOs, and I think they, like, when a funder asks, who has funded you? Like, that's an important question. And I think sometimes community-based, like CBO directors, executive directors, don't even know that people, they want to know that somebody else has funded you. And like you said, who do you come with? Like, we want to know that there is another community partner, a trusted partner for, like, that comes with you, because that goes to the structure that says, okay, we can trust. Like, no funders is expecting that they're going to go in and solve the problem alone of all of the CBOs, in LA County. Like, you need partnership.
And partnership could also be giving circles. People forget about giving circles all the time. There are giving circles in LA that might only give $10,000, but that's a power punch if you're coming to a funder asking for money, because someone's willing to invest in you. $5,000 to $10,000 means someone said yes already.
Yes.
So it makes me want to get more curious.
Yes.
And my colleagues get more curious.
Yes. I think that switch, like, of just knowing, like, it's not just the need, because I've been in conversations where it's like, hey, here's the need and no one's funded us yet, so doesn't that prove more of a need? And it's like, no, you need to show that, hey, somebody is already invested, the solutions are already there, you have built partnerships, and then you move from there, which I think a lot of CBOs do inherently. They just don't articulate it.
And they don't
narrative.
Like having a soapbox. Some people are so in the doing that they are uncomfortable with the light on them being. And in this climate, you have to do both.
Yeah.
Because you also have to show you stand for something at the same time.
Yes, that's a good point. Someone comes to mind, like, when you say that.
I was gonna say that's actually everyone is always surprised when I say it's actually my greatest insecurity. And that's something as part of narrative shifting for CBOs we need to do, is also the unlearning and unshedding of imposter syndrome. I personally don't really care for the soapbox moment as part of my job. And I do this here moment from my sister because it's from my sister and from my people, and I get to meet new people. But I would prefer to be behind the scenes doing the work. And I think to Amelia's point, that isn't an effective part of my role though. My role is to be an ambassador. My role is to fundraise. My role is to drive sort of awareness on our organization. And that means doing activities like this, even if it makes me uncomfortable. And that is sort of the call of leadership. And so we have to recognize that, let's say the soapbox is your place though, because I see that too. You have to recognize that advocacy for advocacy's sake is not the work. Advocacy is merely another tool in our toolbox to actually create physical change in which the people in around us can have a world that looks different. And so for those whose soapbox they're so comfortable with, we need to also back that up with some teeth and some sort of tangibility in how the world is now going to look differently. And I think marrying those two together is really what can create success that a funder believes in.
When you respond like that, it's like, of course you belong on a soapbox, you know what I mean? But I know, but I hear you. But it's like, because you have this very fine, I think both of you, like you have this very fine way of looking at the distinctions and the kind of like the distinctions that really move an organization forward, and you just have the experience, you know what I mean? I think it is easy to get caught into like just talking and being seen, you know what I mean? Especially in our current culture, but you also have the experience of having built an org from the ground up and, you know, building relationships throughout the state and nationally. And I think that you bring out like really important perspectives, you know what I mean?
Nothing wakes me up better than when I go onto my campus, in which there are 48 souls that live there as residents, and seeing them walk through the campus, seeing them access services, saying hi to them, seeing my staff. There is nothing more. There is no better feeling. There's no CNN interview. There is no podcast. There is no front cover of Time magazine that feels better than to actually see that all of the work you have done in your life, that even one life was changed. And I think for activists, for organizers, for leaders, we need to reconnect to that feeling of actually the positives of seeing our world change, and use that as a driving jet fuel to do more and to be more focused on tangible outcomes for our people.
Yeah, I respect.
Soapbox down now.
Thank you. No, we'll stay in. But so as far as table setting, and I think I just want to back up just a little bit, but I think in alignment with what you were saying, Gabe, sometimes CBOs don't always see the benefit, and actually Amelia too, CBOs don't always see the benefit of making connections with legislators and policymakers. Like, what would you say that, like, what's the importance of civic engagement, you know, as a community-based organization? Sometimes they're like, we're just going to do the work. It doesn't matter who's in office. You know what I mean?
Well, that's interesting because some philanthropy organizations don't see the benefit either. You know, I have had the pleasure of currently working for a state-based funder now, and I go to meetings across the country, and I'm in rooms with people who are asking me like, how did you get this passed? Or, you know, how are you building relationships? Like, tell me, how are you building relationships with your state officials, right? And they feel like that's for their policy department, and then their role is just to stay in community. And it kind of goes back to, I guess, my early days of thinking around public-private partnerships. Like, the local level is so important, not just the national political voting, which everyone go vote.
Yeah, it's happening.
It's happening. But the local level is so key, and so is the state level. And, you know, you are either a placeholder or a stakeholder, is what one of my mentors always says to me. Good point. And it's so powerful for you to know what's going on. And if you can't be at the table, you can't be at that event, read about it. I mean, social media kind of breaks a lot of things down. I mean, a lot of it is not true. Some of it is trash, but some of it is actually, you know, really true and into sound bites that is digestible. I think some people get overwhelmed with connecting with legislators and really understand what advocacy means and what that thin line between advocacy and lobbying means for a 501c3. And so I just really think it's an opportunity to educate yourself, especially in this climate, because you can really track what will be funded in the future if you're tracking what's happening at the policy level.
Absolutely.
That's a good point. Gabe, TruEvolution was born out of policy. Like, I think policy changed. So, and I think you have done a pretty masterful job of staying connected with legislators, policy leaders, and making friends. So I guess what would you say to that? How impactful has that been, I guess, in the growth?
I had no idea what the power of both advocacy and lobbying used appropriately could do. Our housing development project was secured with $10 million initially of state general fund money, uh, advocated hard by Assembly member Sabrina Cervantes.
Yes, yes.
And then subsequently, our most recent award of a little over $3 million to launch the Inland Empire LGBTQ Center, along with our philanthropic legacy fund, also came from organizing with senators and assembly members and having the support of our governor as well. And it just really revealed the power of advocacy and lobbying to create at least one-time investments when you have a plan that allows you to sustain that investment and you can grow and magnify from it. Then yeah, even if you put all your chips, 2 to 3 years of hard advocacy and lobby just for one win, one time. If you do it calculatedly, it could be amazing for community-based orgs.
I think the point you made about just of having like a sustained plan is important too. Like, you can have like a one-time investment, but you have to show how this is going to grow. And I think funders want to know that, right, Amelia?
And we don't need a long plan. We don't need a 50-page plan. We just need a short idea of where do you want to be in by the end of next year if I invest in you. Where do you want to be in 3 to 5 years? And honestly, that's something we all should just be asking about ourselves anyway.
Anyways, yeah.
And then we can actually use that to motivate team members, partners, staff, to think, how can we think individually, but bring that to being a collective so we can have a real big impact.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I was good. So next question. A lot of CBOs struggle to just build relationships. Do you have any pro tips? Because again, I feel like both of you are so good at this. Like, you just know everyone. If I see there's some names, like, you look at an agenda, you're like, oh, this person will be there. You just know they'll be in the room. But I think a lot of, again, they are so connected to the doing, like they know people in the community. They don't know funders. They don't know, policymakers. How do you begin to build those out of network relationships? Any pro tips, any recommendations?
I mean, well, one, if there's any funders listening from the funder side, I would say just walk up to them. I remember when I've been in LA back for 9 years and I first went to a conference and I started talking to someone and they were complaining about not having funding from the organization I was working for at the time.
Did they know that you were with the organization?
Well, they eventually found out. And so, but I said to them, well, when's the last time you applied for something? And they got very upset with me. And then they came back to me and sent me an email.
Amelia,
and said,
Amelia will tell you.
You're right. Can we have lunch?
Yeah.
And on my personal time, I just had lunch with them. I had no edge over what they were applying for that specific department at that organization. But what I did say to them was, you can't complain that there is a scarcity of money if you aren't applying. But that goes back to, as a funder, I was curious to why they felt like they couldn't apply. And so I just think having a conversation like we are now, it's just transformative. That's how stop signs get put up, right?
Yeah.
That's how, people get a new leader in an organization. Philanthropy wants to fund something new. It's coffee.
Yeah.
And maybe you'll see each other in the room and get to say hi. Maybe it might not turn into a grant this year.
That's right.
But it might turn into something next year, and 5 years down the line, it might turn into a big grant. So you really just have to, say hello. And I just really want to say that to funders. Quickly, from the CBO side, you should always be meeting people.
Yeah.
You and your executive team and your board members, because no one talks about board members. They should always be out meeting people. They don't always have to ask for money, but they should be out meeting people. So I'm going to turn over to Gabe and see what his
I love that. I was trying to find 8 million threads to pull from on that, to pull on that through line. But I agree. I think, number one, have something to invite the funders to, and always have a point of conversation. So a lot of times people say, well, I don't know how to, approach the funder or invite the funder. Well, have a thing. I always tell my staff, email the funder when there's an update on something big.
Yes.
That's a good moment
you should
to reach
make a
out
billboard.
to them. Yeah. When you have a big moment, hey, we just opened up our campus. Hey, today we're releasing our scholarship fund. Hey, we're announcing the scholarship today. Hey, it's the gala. Hey, we're having a backyard barbecue with our local clients, even if it's something as small as the backyard barbecue. Use those as moments to invite the funder, engage the funder, and let them know what you're doing. And also have patience. This is true relationship building. If you approach it like a transaction, they're going to treat you like a transaction. If you approach it like a relationship, they will treat you like a relationship. I remember I had a funder, I mean, one of the storied funders. I can't say it, I can't say it out here, but it's like the big people that you never thought would ever notice you. It took them about 2.5 years of just relationship building and of email non-responses and sort of you having to follow up 10 times for a hi, sorry, I've been busy, but let me get right back to you. That's okay, because 2.5 years later, we got the award. We're in the house. We're part of the family. You have to approach it with a level of patience, a level of consistency.
I was about to say consistency.
And a level of empathy. Because what I try to tell my staff all the time is you think that these are robots. You think they are here from Mount Olympus. They came and they brought gold and they are endowed with all powers. No, they are stressed. They are overworked. They got families. They probably, maybe not all the way happy with their place of employment all the times as well. Let's talk about that.
Let's be real.
And so you have to know that you're talking to people.
Yeah.
And they have limitations as well. And so you need to treat the funders the same way you treat the clients, the same way you treat each other, the same way you treat me, with a human level of empathy. And that is a true component of relationship building.
So thank you for what you have both said, because that relationship building is so important, and people don't know how to do it. And I would just I just want to pause there for a minute, because you mentioned responding, sending out emails, sending out texts. You're like, oh, I didn't get a response. Please don't take that personally. No. Do you know how many times I paid for lunch and they have not, it has not come back to me? It's okay. But I think that it is okay. Still send the invitation and know that they have a whole world that they are living in, and you trying to be a new part of that world takes time. It might take multiple reminders. It might take that, and it is okay. The other thing I think about is getting coffee. I think that's so important. And I remember, and it's this little tip, if you invite somebody out for coffee, make sure parking is easy and accessible so that they can be present with you when you do that. If you invite somebody out, don't make them pay for it, just as a kindness. It's not a big deal, but just as a kindness. Yeah. And then, like you said, be in it for the long term, because if somebody comes to you saying, oh Lord, there's a fire and I need your money now, how likely are you to give it if you don't know this person? But if you've been building a relationship over a year at least, or even months, it makes a difference. So I think there are some ways that people just get really intimidated. It's almost like the doctor in the white coat. They get intimidated as soon as you hear funder, but the funders want to help. They want to know. I think we do. And
if I can just add one more tip, as you're building that relationship, I'm pretty sure you've benefited from this before. There comes the end of our fiscal year, and somebody has some extra money that
baby, I love the end of a fiscal year.
Yes.
It's coming up now. I'm excited to talk to a few funders. What's happening?
So one, I would say,
they're trying to unload. It's flushing the money.
Find 3 funders that you're going to approach new this year.
Love that.
And then figure out when are their budgets in. When is their new fiscal year?
Yes.
And just start building a relationship with them. Because at the end of the day, funders across the country, funders in LA have to spend the money.
That's right.
And so you might look up and have been sending them 10 million things a week, a day, a month, a year. Be
consistent.
Yep.
And then they will just out of the blue say, hey, I have this $50,000 check. Can I get it to you in 3 days? Can you guys sign this? Can you? And you'll be like, what?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I hear grantees throughout my career say that, right? But we're watching. I cannot stress to you.
Make sure your books are in order so you can get the check. Make sure your paperwork is in order.
I cannot stress to you how much I read, even on the weekend. I read things this morning before coming here to keep up with what's happening. Even if I don't talk to people, I am reading what's in my email. I am reading stuff on their website. I am on Instagram. I go find out a lot of information on Instagram, and I'm finding out how people are responding to you. Not that you got back to their comments. I am paying attention to what people are saying who went to the event. I'm paying attention to people talking in your shorts, right? So social media is a powerful tool. And how do you just use that to capture a picture, a moment, an event in time? Someone's going to look at that. Yeah. So consistency, when you were talking the entire time, Gabe, I was like, this is a big old C, consistency.
Yeah.
consistency with anything, you will get results. You just have
Trust.
to have the patience.
Trust.
Shay. Okay. A big phrase, I feel like power building and systemic change. Those
Yeah.
are like the
Those
mantras.
words,
Yeah,
yeah.
those are the mantras of, the fundraising world right now. But I think that there are still some CBOs that are like, I think they do it and don't know what they're doing. Like, if you can define, if Amelia, I'll come back to you as a funder, what is power building and systems change from the funder's perspective? What does that look like?
So, one, you have to make sure you are working with a funder that funds power building, because every funder does not fund power building.
Mm-hmm.
But let's use your civic engagement example, how we
Mhm.
talked about. You can do power building around policy
Mm-hmm.
to have agency around an issue you want to move forward with your community. And how do you get policymakers and other philanthropic organizations involved? And you could really do that on their dime. How are you building power to get not just bodies to a place, but
Mhm.
people who are on board with your mission and vision for this particular issue at this time? So maybe we just take the few of us in here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we end up next week. You've been talking to people. I've been talking to people. We've been meeting, having coffee, right? We have a training, and we have 50 people by the end of the month,
Mm-hmm.
right? That is a form of power building and letting people know what their agency is around an issue and how we could actually move this together. Power building is not holding power individually. And I think
Mm-mm.
people get that confused. When they hear power, they think gravitas,
Mm-hmm.
right? Power is about people and just being.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be the best way I can actually describe that. And then from a systemic system change level, how do you build power to actually change a system?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you can't get to the system and change one thing, you're going to keep going around that circle and that merry-go-round over and over again. So you really got to look at what is the root cause of something that you're trying to solve.
Yeah.
And that's really where you should spend your time when funders or people or fundraising start talking about systemic issues.
Yeah.
That's how you can just talk about what is the issue that you're trying to change at the root. So
Absolutely.
Root cause. Yeah.
I was captivated. Yeah.
She does that.
No, I'm with it because I totally agree. And I think that strategically pooling together resources, not pooling.
Mm-hmm.
So many streams coming together into one pool
Break it down.
strategically of
Mhm.
resources, I think is what power building looks like. And it can come in many forms. I think there's a key word that I try to infuse with my staff, and that's sustainability or self-sustaining.
Please.
I think sustainability is the buzz business word, but I think the term self-sustaining gets more to what we're describing.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever is the mechanism, the program, the initiative,
Yes.
can it exist beyond you?
Yes.
Can it exist without your continuing throwing logs in the fire? Does it recreate and regenerate itself on its own?
Yes.
And I think that is what we need to start saying when we say sustainability, because I think it's such a nuanced term. People don't know what it means. But can something sustain itself without you continuously throwing logs, say a grant, or say needing a grant, or a charitable donation? Let's say none of that came anymore. Can whatever it is you created have a means of generating revenue on its own?
Yeah.
You were speaking to my heart. I'm like, that is exactly what I was trying to get out, because I feel like a lot of times people don't look at it like that. They think, oh, as long as I'm working, you know what I mean?
No, that actually, so my staff, they come to me in our housing program, and they're constantly throwing out what we call these basic needs requests. Client needs a haircut. Client needs clothing. Client needs this. I mean, it's everything a mom and dad would give to their kids, right? I get requested to provide that. And before I approve it, I say to my team, is this something you and I and we can commit to providing ongoing for everyone indefinitely? If the answer is yes, then let's move forward. If the answer is no, then you are committing greater harm, because there is a dependence that community has on you when you say I'm offering something like housing or food. There becomes this interdependence that they have in you. And if all of a sudden the ebbs and flows of you providing this service, you are creating greater harm by offering a service that you cannot sustain. So it's best to not provide it at all, because community is resilient. Community knows how to survive. They don't need you coming in being disruptive on a service that you cannot sustain just because you had a 1-year grant.
Right.
You might as well just not provide it at all.
Right.
And
What is
so
the long-term plan?
And so that's where I sort of get my team thinking about when they propose new things to me. What is the ongoing sustainable plan so that this can be an indefinite service we offer, not a one-time service or a one-year service or a one grant cycle service that we offer?
Thank you.
Can I talk about the business aspect of though, even though you
Please.
have the MBA?
No.
I'm
But
a
puzzle piece is all I am.
The one thing that has stood out to me for the last decade, even before moving to LA, but when I first got here, is when I would have conversations with community leaders and I would say, what's your superpower? And they would tell me, and I would say, are you training other people on that to bring in revenue? Because you can lead a whole organization, but if you have a superpower, you can do that in your sleep.
Right.
Mhm.
And so are you building courses to
Mhm.
teach other organizations
Right.
how to do this?
I love
Right?
that question.
You don't have to rob them of all their money, but like you
Mhm.
can still charge for something. There's reciprocity here,
Yeah.
right? And so that is a way to also create sustainable revenue
Yes.
back into your organization as a leader, because you are giving out your superpower and then it becomes a resource.
Mhm.
And
that can
funders
be
want to know
used.
you have sustainable revenue.
We
They
do.
want to know that you have a diverse
do.
portfolio and diverse streams of income, right? So that they are not the only one coming to save you, you know?
Yes.
So
Well, sometimes they need saving
Yeah.
because I have had funders over the pandemic tell me that they were severely impacted by inflation, and that was their reasonings for pausing their grants. I've had funders tell me that they're experiencing administrative burdens, and it's the reason why they're delayed. I've had funders tell me privately that they're having internal burnout of their own staff. And so there's also reasons that supersede and go past all of you. And this goes back to the empathy and humanization of your funder. And when you can empathize and humanize them as people as well,
yeah.
then we can know how to work together and negotiate and kind of articulate what our mutual accountability is to each other.
When you said that, it made me think again, like what we were saying about being transactional. It's like if you can humanize the person, then you're not just showing up. I mean, yes, you need funding, but if you can really think of them as a whole person, whole and complete, that have needs outside of this, then you do care. Then you do care. Okay, they're burnt out too. You know what I mean? And if you have a diverse portfolio, then you're not exclusively dependent on this one thing to happen for you to be successful or happy or able. It's like, I think it, like you said, they need saving too. So it is helpful to have these other streams of income, these other partnerships, other irons in the fire, if you will, so that it gives you room to be compassionate and not just showing up in because you could be showing up in a transactional relationship,
Yes.
even
Yeah.
as a community-based
Yes.
organization.
Yes. Talk
Yes,
about that.
I'm like,
Can I
please.
hear? I would like to hear what the funder has to say from
Yes.
the funder's perspective.
Yes.
On that aspect.
Well, one, I want to say thank you for acknowledging all the things of why we are delayed.
Mm.
I mean, I really, and this came up at a national conference I attended
True
this year
to
in
this.
Chicago. And on the platform, there was a funder up there saying, I'm not only processing your grant contract, but your other fellow colleague across the way,
Yep.
I'm helping them with another funder out when I'm not in the office,
Yep.
on my personal cell phone or on the weekend, get them connected to someone else.
Yeah.
And everyone in the room was just like really quiet, but it was a conversation piece. And it was a conversation piece particularly for those of us of color in philanthropy.
Yeah.
Because there's so few of us.
Yeah.
And so we often came to this work because of our internal commitment to community,
Yeah.
right? And so because of that, we're working after hours to see the community grow. So I just
Mhm.
really
Yeah.
just appreciate you saying
Absolutely.
that. But I also would like to say about transactional, people see philanthropy as a bank,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mhm.
And people have an idea that there's just an endless amount of money. One, each philanthropic organization has a cap on how much they can spend for the year.
Yeah.
And that's why we're saying, do your homework, find out what their budget is, figure out what
What
that
the
looks like.
calendar is.
What is the calendar and how many grantees do they have?
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at how many grantees they have,
Yeah.
you just give an average number, you divide that, you can
Yeah.
kind of get an idea of how much they really could fund, right?
Yeah.
And so just being realistic about, I need the money now. Okay, thank you, and bye. I
Yeah.
can't tell you over the course of my career how many times that has happened.
Yeah.
And then they get the money, and then sometimes you're having to chase after them
Yeah.
to get what you need.
Yeah.
And after you get what you need, you don't hear from them.
It's like,
You
I
don't-
want to be able to fund you next year. So
right.
I need
Yeah.
to
You
have
don't know
the
what they're
information.
doing.
Yeah.
And then it's like they need something again. Well, transactional is also about how are you engaging the funder
Mm-hmm.
to learn what their vision is so you can see alignment.
Yeah.
You don't only want alignment with your team, you want alignment with people who are investing in you.
Yeah.
Because then everybody comes to the playground
Right.
understanding what the vision is without you having to run the vision back like 9 million times.
Right.
May I jump in on that on a how? Because I can already hear some of my colleagues in the CBO land saying, well, we don't have the resources to invest the way TruEvolution does at maintaining relationships.
Yeah.
So I work with a small cohort of young Black leaders who all were given micro grants to build their own social enterprises. And I was sort of the mentor coach component that, is that. And they get to propose whatever they wanted with the money. And it was not bad. It was enough to certainly support one consultant for 1 year to do something, or you could have used it for something else.
Mm-hmm.
And I allowed them to all, propose their ideas. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to tell you all straight up. You need to use this money to recreate more money. If this money is unrestricted, if it can be used for anything, it does not have to be used for your program activity. Use it to recreate the money. So what I would say is, for early community-based organizations, you should only be doing the services. You should only be doing the activities and programs that is feasible, minus overhead, minus development.
Okay.
Okay, so you have $100,000, you minus all your overhead. You got $50,000 left, or whatever is the overhead that may be allowed in the administrative indirect of the grant. So you take off all operations costs, you invest in your development. Then what is left, that is what is reasonably feasible for you to put as a direct program expense. Now, if those ratios are off for the funder, then you got to correct that somehow by diversifying 1 or 2 additional grants. But that is what I've always done, has just honestly presented to the funder, this is how much you gave me. This is my overhead. This is what I need to invest in. So my scope of work, we just cut the scope of work in half. Because you gave me 1/4 of what I asked. So we're going to cut the scope of work at least in half.
And a lot of CBOs do the opposite.
I know they do, because we have imposter syndrome and we are bullied. Both. We have both. We feel like we need to do more as organizations of color to be able to stand out. And then in some foundations, they do perpetuate that reality where they do only go to the organizations that are producing either high volume or organizations that have the biggest soapbox. And so you say to yourself after a while, I either have to get a bigger soapbox or I have to sort of force myself into high volume. And so I just say, stick to your principles and stick to your feasibility, and you will
stick
find.
to your indirects.
And say that again. Stick to your.
Stick to your indirects.
Thank you.
Because a lot of organizations, particularly organizations of color in LA, are not charging their true costs and their true indirects.
No.
And they will lower the indirect just to get the grant, but it ends up hurting them.
Yes.
We are coming to a close, but I have got to get this. And Gabe, thank you so much for the information, and Amelia. But I have to ask you, Gabe, succession planning, because this is a big deal, I think, with CBOs, especially as CEO founders. How this is something that I think a lot of CBOs struggle with. You've put a plan in place, but what was your approach to succession planning when, as you think about kind of the phase of TruEvolution, if you are not there to run it?
There is an enormous amount of peace, liberation, and other visions of prosperity that come from when you let go control of being a founder. I don't even really introduce myself as a founder anymore. My bio says CEO of TruEvolution.
Yes.
I don't really put in founder often unless they really want people to know I'm a founder. I really want the organization to no longer be of me. And no matter how much I try, everyone says TruEvolution is you, right? So I'm never going to escape that attachment. But I think from an operational perspective, you're as a leader first, you have to see the value proposition in the surrender of the control. And there isn't a huge value proposition when, as a founder, you shave control. You actually find you can make a whole lot more money.
If you let
this go, you realize that you can capitalize on all that you have built and all of your success as a founder. And there's people that are willing to offer you different other kinds of opportunities. You can be writing books. You can be being a professor. You can be a consultant for the foundations. And there's so many opportunities to diversify your income when you're not so focused on control.
Yeah.
The second is cultivating your internal leadership. I know, because I sit on several large boards as well, we put out the calls, right? We put out the open calls. I very transparently come from the philosophy of promoting from within. And no shade, I know the foundations do, even though they do the open call, they also believe in that as well. And so if you're going to promote from within, you need to have people to promote from within. People who are aligned with your culture, your values, your systems, your approaches, and who have the experience and respect of your staff and your community. So those are the two things, you as a leader, and then begin cultivating before you even do the core elements of a strategic plan. You need to have at least people that you could potentially identify to be your successor.
Oh, so much information, good stuff. And I just want to I want a part 2. I'm just putting that out there. I want part 2. Amelia, in closing, almost, what don't CBOs know about philanthropy?
I think they don't know that we're actually really accessible. They're looking for us, but we're looking for them. I mean, I couldn't stress that enough. And we are people, right? All of us. I don't care what color the person is. We're looking for them, and we want to have the conversation with you. We don't want the conversation on email. We want the conversation in person.
That's right.
On Zoom.
That's right.
We don't want to go back and forth with you on a conversation in email.
Y'all want to get off the computer just like we do.
You know, because we all also are always going to so many things, and we're there to meet people. The other thing I want to say, just on the thread of succession planning, you know, stack your bench. If you are a 2-people organization, stack your bench with people who are smarter than you.
Yes.
Because it will release your anxiety about if something happens, who could pick up the baton.
Yes.
And if we can think about the Olympic 100-meter
the relay,
the gold, you know, all of them came to the table with different leadership styles to run that race, right? But they partnered and they trusted each other, but they did that because their bench was stacked with people that are amazing. So that's the one thing I think philanthropy, I think CBOs really need to know about philanthropy is we are here and we just want to get to know you and then let the doors open up from there.
Absolutely. Ashe.
Last question. What is a village to you?
Whatever a village is to you, at first and foremost and beginning and last, it should be healing. That, at least for me, is what a village should be. It might be a lot of different things, but for me, at least, it should always be healing.
Thank you, Gabe.
I love that. I love that.
Amelia, what is a village?
A village is something that does not restrict you. And it lets you go as high, as wide as you can to take up space for what you were divinely here for. And resting, and you get to rest in that when you want to rest. That is a village to me.
Ashe. Thank you so much. Thank you just for being here, for imparting all of your wisdom. And like I said, I'm sure there are days of books. I hope that you are always downloading this good information that y'all are carrying around. But we thank you for sharing it with us today, and just sharing it with our audience. And we are just in awe and in gratitude for what you are giving. So thank you.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Always.
Yeah.
Stay connected as we continue our conversations with the Village Fund grantees supporting Black maternal health in LA and the Changemakers supporting strong community-based organizations. Episodes for this 5-part series will be released weekly. You won't want to miss these discussions. Stay tuned.